Hello everybody and welcome to Round 3 Reviews, back with another Japanese deep dive into remake territory for the 13 Assassins, released in 2010, directed by Takashi Miike. I have recently done the original 13 Assassins on the channel in terms of a test this with you, and as mentioned at the end of that, I wanted to really dive into the remake, and I like exploring these kind of differences between the original and the remake. Long dormant, had the 13 Assassins Blu-ray for quite some time on the shelf, and now it is a good opportunity to dive into this for the very first time. Now, what's interesting is that Takashi Miike is a director that I've been really wanting to explore more of his films for quite some time. I have dabbled into a few of his films here and there, and I don't think I've seen nowhere near as enough. And I've seen a few of his main kind of entry movies, some of his more obscure ones, and I have seen another remake he did do called Graveyard of Honor, which, to be perfectly honest, I didn't like it, but that was more down to the story and the character, less about the filmmaking. But I do like many of his other films like Audition or One Missed Call, and he's done quite a selective amount of films. I want to say more than 100 at this point. I do really like this director, and I really do want to see more of his filmography, and I do own and really like Audition and, of course, One Missed Call, and I know he's done quite a few V-Cinema films, which I haven't checked out yet. There's loads of that director to explore. There is a fantastic box set coming up soon from Radiance Films, which I'm really diving into, hopefully soon on the channel. There's many kind of films to kind of explore and watch for the very first time, but that is getting a trilogy box set of 3 very hard access films on 4K and in HD for the very first time. So there is a lot to like in this director, and I'm looking forward to diving into more soon. And with that being said, I was very curious and kind of cautious to see what he would do in terms of a reimagining of that storyline, because as mentioned in my review already for the original, it is a very simple premise. It's been done quite a few times in different variations, and it's not the most original story, but it is a very wholesome film about honor, about class, about doing the right thing, and having a real kind of nasty kind of lord in a position of power doing things he shouldn't be doing, essentially assaulting women, killing men, and terrorizing people, then getting to a point where he is going to be a much more higher position where he's going to be untouchable and no justice can be served. So I was very curious to see what this director would do. What can you adapt in terms of a modern interpretation, a modern thinking 2010 interpretation of that original samurai age? What are you going to do with that material? And I got to say, the results for the 13 Assassins 2010 is fucking incredible. I loved this movie, and I am kicking myself for not watching this sooner. Maybe I just would have enjoyed it by itself without watching the original, but holy shit. I gotta say, it's better than the original, and that is saying something right there. And I enjoy both films for different reasons, of course. I do think this is a better interpretation of the story. I think this takes the story, amplifies it, expands upon it, and for the majority, I would say, of the film, it is almost a shot-by-shot remake. Almost, it is a very verbatim kind of scene by scene, same dialogue, same kind of setup, but just done in a very unique and different style, but just takes it to a whole nother level on this one. And it's surprisingly me as well, because this is a 2.5-hour movie, and there is an extended cut, which makes it even longer, which unfortunately I don't have access to. I have watched the international version, which is the kind of the standard kind of default. I know the Japanese version is much longer, has about 17-18 minutes longer, and explores a few extra characters that appear in the film and has a bit more conversation, maybe a bit more violence, potentially here and there. Hopefully I'll get around to seeing that extended cut someday, but from what I know about it, it is an interesting, another angle of the film, which wasn't explored, unfortunately, in the international version. However, not to say the international version is bad. This is a 2.5-hour movie, a longer film than the original, and I think that extra amount of time is put to really good use. With this director, I know what he's capable of. I know how nuts he can get. I know how violent he can really go, especially within some of his other films that I've seen, horrors and Yakuza films. And I was really surprised how respectful he was of the original material. He really does almost a shot-by-shot, has a similar kind of scenes, but just does his own kind of spin, utilizing shadow work. It's a colored movie, having kind of atmosphere and tension, and not just within the violence, but also how it's handled, how you add tension and mood, and adding some extra additional scenes and dialogue exchanges. There is some restraint here. There is some things that I was expecting him to do in terms of a full-blown rape sequence. I was expecting that to happen within the film because they didn't do it in the original, and I thought that's something that's going to happen here. They don't do it. Instead of doing that, keeping it similar to the original, and almost shot by shot. Obviously adding a bit more violence in there, having some time to let the scene kind of sink in a little bit more, showing the more cruelty aspect later on within the kind of the witnesses, the kind of the family, the servants that he has, by shooting arrows in their chest and having blood, and how nasty he can really become, and also showing a girl he's deformed by chopping off all her limbs, a tongue, and she has to write on a piece of paper accounting of what happened and writing total massacre. I like the fact that the kind of the leader of the 13 assassins, the one that's kind of bringing these people together, he states that he is making the biggest gamble of his life, and he's going to put his life on the line for this cause, to stop this Joffrey type, Shogun's brother, from seizing power, from his journey, about to be on the council, and even himself. That Lord says during the film, like, man, this is what war looks like. This is what it tastes like. I'm going to bring back war. It wouldn't be fun to bring back war. We were at peace at the moment. And, he's just a real sicko character, real sicko kind of character, which is demonstrated throughout the victims he leaves behind, and utilizing the fact that it is a more of a modern, more high budget film. It has greater sets, it has greater action set pieces, greater choreography, but it doesn't lose its sense of very emotional, very character-driven film, and it doesn't lose the heart of what made the original special. It keeps that kind of core energy going. You understand where these characters are, their motivations. There's an expansion of some of the more lesser characters that were in the original. Get more to do here. And I love the kind of the extra moments, the kind of the internal kind of politics that were going on in terms of what it means to be a samurai and to live and die and breathe by the code of that. And, this idea of the structure, the idea of the rulers and the servants and the samurai kind of code, and how some of these individuals here, the more seasoned ones and the upcoming kind of samurai, want their taste of battle or want to be paid. Or there's a wonderful sequence at the start of the film where after he sees the deformed girl, in terms of what happened to her, and he just kind of like borderline sort of laughs at his kind of like destiny has come for him. He has been praying and hoping for an honorable death, a meaningful end to his life, living by the samurai code, and now he's found it, and now he is justified. The numbers definitely get stacked on him this time compared to the original, where they have 200 men compared to 70, which I think was in the original. So definitely the odds are against them, but they have booby traps, explosions, arrows and spears and all sorts of wonderful things that are being kind of demonstrated, fire, and it's a complete nuts bloodbath towards the third act of the film. And even before getting to that, it's so enjoyable, so engaging, and it's so well kind of presented in terms of how he wants to position these characters and the politics, and has some like comedy, and you really understand who these characters are, why they're doing it, and it gets really kind of gnarly, really gritty and personal towards that third act, which I think is absolutely incredible. I do know that there is a TV movie remake of 13 Assassins, I think in the 90s, if I'm not mistaken. Is that any good? Is that worth checking out? Please comment down below. Maybe I'll try and find that to complete this kind of 13 Assassins trilogy. Who knows? What are your thoughts and impressions on 13 Assassins? Do you prefer the international version, the extended cut? Do you prefer the original, the TV remake? Love to know your thoughts and impressions. Please comment down below. So in time goes down for reviews. So yeah.